Chapter 1. The Night We Don't Talk About. The clink of champagne flutes, the soft hum of jazz from a grand piano, and the low drone of practiced laughter filled the rooftop bar of the Langford Hotel. It was the kind of place where charity galas and backroom deals collided, where a smile could be a weapon and a handshake a transaction. Elena Rivera stood alone at the edge of the balcony, her fingers wrapped around a half-empty glass of rosé she hadn't tasted in over 10 minutes. Below her, the city sprawled, glittering and untouchable. Inside, people mingled under chandeliers the size of small planets, men in sharp tuxedos and women in gowns sewn tighter than their facades. She exhaled slowly, trying not to look like she was escaping, even though she was. The gala was a favor. A client had insisted she attend to network, which she knew was code for put on a dress and look grateful. She'd chosen navy silk, elegant but safe, a dress that said, "I belong here," even if she wasn't sure she wanted to. The weight of eyes had followed her all night, but not with desire. Curiosity, suspicion, the quiet scrutiny of men who wondered if she was with someone important or just important herself. She didn't bother correcting them. It was easier to stay enigmatic. "Elena Rivera," said a low voice behind her. Not a question, a statement. She turned. The man was tall, lean, and in direct contradiction to the noise and gloss of the party. His tuxedo was precise, understated. His presence was not. Shadowed eyes, sharp jaw, the kind of beauty that made people nervous. He looked like he didn't care for the party either, which intrigued her more than it should have. "I didn't say my name tonight," she said cautiously, blinking once. He tilted his head, a half-smile ghosting over his lips. "You did, briefly. In passing, I noticed." "That's a strange thing to notice." "I'm a strange man." He wasn't wrong. "Should I be flattered or concerned?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. "Flattered. Definitely flattered." She allowed herself a smile, small, involuntary. It had been too long since someone looked at her like that, not like a resume, not like a liability, just looked. "And what's your name, stranger who notices?" A pause, then with deliberate coolness, "Let's keep it even. No names." She blinked, surprised and a little intrigued. She should have walked away then. She didn't. "What is it you think I want from you?" she asked. Not flirtatious, just curious. He studied her. "Absolutely nothing. That's why I'm here." And somehow that made sense. In a room full of people who wanted something, money, influence, attention, they were two ghosts orbiting each other, not asking for anything real. Just one night off. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. Not forceful, not seductive, just honest. "Where?" "Somewhere the music doesn't sound like everyone's faking it." She hesitated. Not because she was afraid, she wasn't, but because she hadn't let herself want anything in so long. Not since her last relationship imploded under the weight of lies and control. Not since her ex-fiancé turned her trust into collateral damage. Elena took his hand. They didn't go far, just 10 floors down to a private suite, the kind that had a grand piano no one ever touched and a minibar stocked with bottles that cost more than her shoes. He poured her a drink without asking, handed it to her gently, then loosened his tie. The silence between them was comfortable, surprising. "You're not like the others," he said at last, watching her over the rim of his glass. She shrugged. "That's what men say when they don't know what to do with you." "I'm not trying to do anything to you." "Then what are we doing?" He paused. "Escaping." The word landed between them like a dare. They kissed first. Not urgently, not hungrily, just intensely. Like the kind of kiss you don't get to have unless something hurts underneath it. Clothes slipped off in pauses, not haste. Each layer, another shield surrendered. Her hands in his hair, his fingers at her waist. A silent agreement they both felt but never said. Tonight doesn't exist tomorrow. When Elena woke the next morning, the sun had barely cracked through the blackout curtains. She was alone in the bed. But he hadn't vanished. A stack of neatly folded clothes lay at the foot, her dress, her heels, a bottle of water, a note. And on the nightstand, a document. She recognized the format before she even read the title. Legal, concise, emotionless. Nondisclosure agreement. Already signed. Her name was left blank. She sat there, heart clenching. It wasn't shocking. He was too polished, too controlled, the kind of man who had been burned one too many times. Maybe he thought she was a risk. Or maybe it was just his routine. She read the fine print. It was specific, covering only one night, one encounter, one memory. Elena stared at it for a long time. Then, with steady fingers, she picked up the pen, signed her name, and placed it gently beside his. She didn't write a note. She didn't look back. 3 months later, she still thought about him, not obsessively, not with longing, but with questions. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only real thing in the room, the way he hadn't asked for anything except her silence, the way neither of them had asked for names. She never expected to see him again. And yet, somewhere deep down, she knew that one night wasn't finished with her, not even close. Chapter 2, The Meeting. 3 months. That's how long it had been since the night Elena Rivera stopped pretending she was immune to mistakes. Since she signed her name to silence, buttoned up her dress, and walked out of a hotel suite that smelled like regret and expensive cologne. And now, here she was, standing in the mirrored elevator of Novatech's downtown headquarters, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from her blazer and trying not to sweat through her silk blouse. Dream job, they'd called it. And it was. Senior project manager at one of the most elite tech firms in the world. Full autonomy. A budget most people would kill for. A team of brilliant engineers at her disposal. But none of that explained the weight in her chest. None of that could prepare her for him. The elevator pinged open onto the executive floor, and Elena's heels clicked down a corridor of sleek white walls and silence that made her nerves hum. A woman with sharp bangs and a clipped British accent led her into the boardroom. "He'll be with you in a moment," she said. "Mr. Roth likes to personally welcome new hires on high-priority contracts." Mr. Roth. Elena had seen the name on the contract. She knew who he was, Novatech's elusive CEO, reclusive billionaire, self-made tech legend, the kind of man who rarely showed his face in public and valued privacy more than profit. Still, she wasn't expecting him. When the glass door opened and Julian Roth walked in, Elena forgot how to breathe. There was no mistake. It was him. The same man from that night. Same storm gray eyes, same cut glass cheekbones, but colder, controlled. His black suit was a wall, not an invitation. He paused mid-step when he saw her. For half a second, something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or disbelief. But just as quickly it vanished. "Miss Rivera," he said, nodding once, "welcome to Novatech." His voice was clipped, formal, like they'd never met, like he hadn't kissed her until her knees went weak or watched her fall asleep in his arms before vanishing behind a legal document. "Mr. Roth," she replied, matching his tone. She sat. He didn't offer a handshake. This was a game, then, a lie they were both about to tell. "We're glad to have you on board," he said, sliding a tablet toward her. "You'll be leading Project Veritas, a multi-phase AI initiative focused on adaptive decision systems. It's under NDA, naturally." She stared at him. "Naturally." Julian leaned against the edge of the table, posture infuriatingly casual. "You'll report to me directly. Weekly check-ins, data reviews, scope alignment. I expect transparency." Elena swallowed. "Transparency," she repeated. "Of course." Their eyes locked, and just like that, the air between them shifted. It wasn't attraction anymore. Not exactly. It was sharper than that, like trying to breathe in a room where the windows had been sealed shut. She should have said something. Asked if this was a joke, if he seriously planned to pretend they were strangers. But she didn't. Because if he could forget that night, if he could compartmentalize her into just another hire, then maybe she could forget too. Maybe. The days that followed were a test in restraint. Elena buried herself in work. She was good at that. Focused, decisive, thorough. She dissected every technical brief, rewrote timelines, and coordinated deliverables like her brain was running on caffeine and pure spite. Julian kept his distance, mostly. He was efficient, impossibly composed. During meetings, he spoke in clean, clipped sentences that left no room for warmth. He corrected errors with surgical precision, praised progress with a nod, and nothing more. But every so often, she'd feel his eyes on her. Not the kind of gaze that belonged to a CEO evaluating performance. It was something more. Weighted. As if he was memorizing her all over again and hating himself for it. The tension didn't fade. It deepened. In late-night syncs with just the two of them, silence bloomed between questions and answers. Once, during a whiteboard session, their hands brushed. Neither of them moved for a full 2 seconds. 2 seconds too long. She broke first. After a Thursday review ran late and the rest of the team filtered out, Elena stayed behind. She pretended to gather her notes. waiting until the room emptied, until the hum of fluorescent lights was the only sound left. Julian was at the window, looking down at the city like it owed him something. "You remember me," she said, quiet but firm. He didn't turn around. "Elena." "No," she snapped. No soft tones, no vague deflections. "Don't stand there and act like I'm just another employee." He turned, finally, his face unreadable. "This is a professional setting." "Right, where we pretend that night didn't happen, that I didn't sign away any right to even talk about it." His jaw tensed. "You signed willingly." "I signed because it was the only closure I got," she shot back, "because I thought it would mean something to you, that you were trying to protect something, not just wipe it clean." Julian looked like he'd been punched, but then his mask dropped back into place. "I was protecting you," he said. That stopped her. "From what? A bad headline?" "From me, Elena." His voice cracked. Barely, but it was there. "From becoming a headline, from being dragged into a narrative you didn't ask for, from people who would twist something intimate into something salacious." She folded her arms, holding herself together with sheer will. "I didn't ask for any of that," she said, "but I also didn't ask to be erased." They stood in silence. Neither moved. Finally, Julian stepped forward, then stopped himself just short of her space. "I haven't forgotten," he said quietly. "Not 1 second of it. But if this becomes personal, we both lose." Elena stared up at him. So close. Too close. "Then maybe you shouldn't have hired me," she said. He met her gaze. "I didn't." She blinked. "What? I didn't know it was you." "HR made the recommendation. The final list came across my desk after the fact. Your resume didn't have a photo. I read your name and didn't think." "You didn't think," she repeated, hurt rising. He winced. "I didn't let myself hope." That, more than anything, undid her. Later that night, back in her apartment, Elena stared at her ceiling for hours. This wasn't just lust. It wasn't revenge or longing or unresolved chemistry. It was something deeper. A wound trying to scar over while still bleeding beneath. She didn't know what Julian Roth wanted from her, if anything. But one thing was clear. They were both lying. To each other. To themselves. And if this continued, something was going to break. Chapter 3, Controlled Burns. The air at Novatech was always just shy of sterile, climate-controlled, scentless, precise. Everything functioned as if error was a myth, as if time itself bowed to Julian Roth's expectations. But beneath the pristine surface, something was shifting. It started in subtle ways. Julian stopped calling Elena Miss Rivera in private meetings. Sometimes he didn't call her anything at all, just looked at her a beat too long, like he wasn't sure where she ended and the memory of that night began. Elena didn't trust it. She buried herself in deliverables, leading the Project Veritas team with relentless efficiency. Under her direction, development milestones that once crawled began flying. She navigated egos, budget negotiations, and cryptic executive reviews like a seasoned general. Her calm was infectious, her expectations sharp. Even Julian couldn't argue with results. And yet, he still tried. At the close of one status review, he cut in just as she outlined a revised rollout schedule. "You've overcommitted our engineering resources," he said flatly, arms folded. "Pull back phase 2. "I disagree," she replied, her voice cool. "And so does the data." He blinked. No one ever challenged him like that, not in public, not even his own board. Julian stepped closer, just enough for tension to tighten between them. "Are you telling me I don't understand my own platform?" "I'm telling you I understand my team," Elena said, eyes steady, "and they're capable of more than your fear of failure allows." The room went still. Then, shockingly, Julian smiled, just for a second. A flicker of pride, or maybe admiration, before it vanished again. He said nothing more, just nodded. The next day, she got every resource she'd asked for. In the evenings, their boundaries blurred. Late nights became common, just the two of them in the quiet glow of an empty war room, whiteboards filled with algorithm flowcharts and philosophical arguments about ethical modeling. Julian didn't just value her opinions, he challenged them, pulled them apart, asked more. One night, over cold takeout and blue light haze, he looked up at her and said, "Do you think machines should ever make emotional decisions?" Elena glanced up from her tablet. "Depends. Are we teaching them to feel or just to mimic what we call morality?" Julian leaned back. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Make a simple question sound like a trapdoor." She grinned. Simple questions are usually lies. He stared at her like he was learning her all over again. And for a moment, it wasn't about work, not even a little. Elena couldn't stop herself from thinking about that night. She remembered the way he touched her like he was afraid to break something already broken. The way their silence hadn't been awkward but reverent, like they both knew words would ruin it. She thought he didn't care, that the NDA meant he'd walked away unscathed. But now she saw how careful he was with every interaction, how private, how tightly wound, like he'd built a fortress and forgotten how to leave it. One evening, as they reviewed sentiment metrics on a test interface, Julian asked, without looking up, "Do you always work like this?" "Like what?" "Like everything's riding on it." Elena stiffened slightly. "Because it usually is." Julian's gaze finally met hers. "You don't talk much about yourself." "Neither do you." He nodded, conceding. "Fair." A long silence. Then he added, almost absent-mindedly, "The last person I trusted gave an interview to the Times, sold a story about our relationship before I even knew she'd left." Elena felt her throat tighten. "You don't have to explain." "I'm not," he interrupted gently. "Just letting you know. Trust isn't free. Not for me." She hesitated. "It isn't for me either." And there it was again, that space between them neither of them dared to name. The leak hit like a thunderclap. It was a Friday morning. Elena had barely stepped into her office when her phone buzzed with a flood of unread messages. At first, she ignored them. She had a call with UX and a sprint debrief in 30 minutes. Then Ava, the lead data analyst, knocked on her door. She looked pale. "You should see this," Ava said, quietly sliding her phone forward. The screen showed a tabloid site. Insider Edge, mystery woman linked to Novatech CEO. A grainy, long-lens photo of Julian outside the Langford Hotel. The headline speculated about a one-night stand with an unidentified woman following a charity gala months prior. No faces, no names, just implications. But Elena knew the night, the hotel, the dress. She felt the ground tilt beneath her. An hour later, she was called to the executive floor. Julian was already there, jaw set like carved stone. He didn't meet her eyes. "Legal is handling it," he said. "No names, no confirmations, we'll bury it." Elena's voice was dry. "You think that's enough?" He finally looked at her. "I didn't do this," he said. "You have to believe me. I didn't say you did." But her chest ached anyway. He moved toward her, his voice low and urgent. "We were careful. I was careful. Apparently not careful enough." That stopped him cold. Julian exhaled sharply, the mask slipping. "I never wanted this to touch you. It already has." They stared at each other in silence, too many words trapped between pride and fear. Then she turned to leave. He didn't stop her, but she felt him watching her go, as if he knew the damage wasn't just external. It was personal, and it was just beginning. Elena and Julian's story is only just beginning. They've built walls, sparked fires, and crossed lines they swore they wouldn't. But what comes next will test everything they thought they knew about trust, loyalty, and love. Don't miss part 2, where secrets surface, hearts break, and the stakes get higher than ever. Subscribe, follow, or turn on notifications so you won't miss what happens when silence turns into confession and desire turns into something deeper.